Hello, this is NEO, just an average CSGO player, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Okay, this is going to be another episode of Talk to Thorin, and my guest for this one is going to be Zibi, who is an old school Counter-Strike player from the Polish scene. He played with a number of players you will know, NEO, TaZ, Luke, members of the famous Golden Five, who obviously won all those majors in CS 1.6. But he was in the lineup just before that. So I thought one of the ways we could have an interesting discussion here, Zibi, is, as I've just referenced there, people know that era. And even then, it'd have to be pretty old school people to actually know the details of the Golden Five and coming up and becoming one of the best teams in the world and winning the majors. But almost no one actually knows the Polish scene before this. And I can tell you that because when I was around myself, in the early days, if you followed European Counter-Strike, you didn't really have to follow many countries. It was Sweden, Denmark, maybe Germany, the UK a bit, some France, but especially Poland, Eastern Europe. These actually weren't really very relevant internationally early on. But these were the teams, including your first ones when it was Pentagram, etc., that rose up and started to become relevant, started to do things. So let's start at the beginning. What were the first versions of Counter-Strike that you were playing? Were you playing in the early betas? When did you become a competitive player or someone who was trying to become good?
Yeah, okay. So thanks for having me, Duncan. So the earliest version was definitely beta. I'm trying to still find out the exact version, but it was just beta. We're just playing there, trying Counter-Strike. How it feels because. Prior to Counter-Strike, we're playing heavily on Half-Life. So we're just checking different modes for Half-Life, and Counter-Strike was one of the modes which we really liked. And it all started in beta version, and then we just stick to it. And fast forward, we're just playing in our first team, first clan.
Okay. Well, what about this then? So I know in the early days, for people who don't know, the players who were going to make up the later on Pentagram team were actually all split apart. They were all in different teams competing against each other. And I know it was you and Luke that were the ones that were aligned early on. And you were in a team called Greenet or something along those lines.
Yeah, right.
So was this actually the first time you were playing with Luke? Had you played with him before? This is pretty early on in CS, right?
No, so in the past in Poland, because we had very bad internet connections at home, so it was really tough to play from home. So we had to use internet cafes. So the case was that most of people had to attend to some cafe in order to play some online games, and it happened that me and Luke were living in pretty much same district in Warsaw, so we were just going to PointNet. That was
right.
A first internet cafe. So this was the place where me and Luke we get know each other. We become friends. We start playing different games. It was Quake, Half-Life, CS, and so on. And at the same time, in different districts, there were many different, internet cafes. So one of them was internet cafe where TaZ was playing. NEO was from a completely different city, so he was playing in Poznań. But we also had a few other, very relevant for esports scene cafes in Warsaw, like Strefa. Sphere, was Sphere, where one of our colleagues played Splash, who then joined us in a more organized and more professional teams, and of course Cyberland. This was one of the major cafes in Warsaw, where they had about 70 PCs. And a few, PlayStation stations. So it was one of the most professional cafes. So basically, we were all split in playing from the different cafes, and that was in the time when we were mostly focusing on the FFA servers. Just playing on the server, just playing casually. But when we were playing from one cafe, we started forming sort of a teams, squads, going to one place, another, owning one map or another. So we figured out, we may name ourselves somehow, create a clan. So that was a case for Greenet. So we moved from Pointed to Greenet, me and Lucas, and that was beginning of let's say a competitive history for us.
Okay.
We obviously, because we were playing from a Greenet, so we joined clan called Greenet. Yes. And that was the case for all of the cafes. So if you were playing from the cafe, you had to represent this cafe. So you just you belong to the cafe name and the clan.
Okay, so what about this then? So I understand this. When you say that because the internet was bad, you were playing from cafes.
Right.
When you were playing from the cafes, you basically only played other people who were in the same internet cafe, and then you only played the other cafes and teams when you traveled to Atlanta. Did you play over the internet against the other cafes?
No. So of course, in order to get to the cafe clan, let's say, you had to first prove yourself, in the cafe, so that you are the best player among all the people that are playing from the cafe. But then, once you are in this clan, we were of course calling each other. One clan leader was calling to another clan leader. That was like very old school time. There was no ERC or Discord or something like this. So we were just having our numbers, and we were just calling in the middle of night to some people from different clans, and we were like asking, "Hey guys, do you playing tonight?" And they were like, "Yes, we were playing. So let's find a server and then let's play." So obviously we were playing online. Cafe versus cafe versus other clans that are playing from home. But the whole process of finding this practices and all these matches, it was very like old school way. You had to call someone. Sometimes you were just waking up people in the middle of the night.
Okay.
And we're like, guys, we are 6 people waiting, 5 people waiting for play. Are you available tonight? And they were like, either wake up somewhere or someone is in the party or something like this. So it was really funny. But yeah, we somehow, we wanted to play as much as possible. So we were spending lots of nights practicing, and fortunately there were a lot of different clans that were also very hooked up with CS, and they were like, playing against us. But that was mostly within, Poland because of the internet connection. So we didn't have chance to expose ourselves to different play styles, different countries, and so on. So it was still forging our play style, tactics, strategies against our competitors from one country. And so that also influenced the play style.
Okay. I know, since, as you say, you couldn't really practice against other places, did that include like all the countries? Like, for example, obviously Germany famously is bordering onto Poland. Like, I know there's some crossover there. Could you play with German teams, or could you actually compete with anyone like competitive outside of Poland, basically?
Yeah, so there was so during when we were playing in a Greenet, so we started attending PG Challenge. That was one of the major event hosted in Czech Republic, usually in Karlovy Vary or Prague or something like this. So our first event, of course, finished with a huge fail. So I think we lost in quarterfinals or even earlier. But that was the time when we realized that we have to, practice with teams from abroad, from Germany, from Czech Republic, and so on. And so we obviously we started contacting them. We started establishing some practice partners and so on. But the rules of these practices were not in our favor, because those guys, they had lots of skilled teams in their countries. So, for instance, if you wanted to play against German team, those teams were forcing us to play on their servers, on their rules.
Right.
So usually they had about 10 to 20 MS. Ping. Whereas we had about 70, 60 or something like this. So even though we were we knew that if we want to progress, we have to agree on these terms and play with them, because at that time we were gaining more from these practices than them, obviously, because we were just
sure,
weaker and team and so on. But the beginning was really tough for us. No one wanted to really play on Polish servers. So yeah.
Could you actually, like, I know often the way it works, especially back in those days in terms of practice, is like you can only practice against teams who think you're like normally worth practicing against, So when you say you practice against German teams, did you actually ever get to play against the good German teams at this point in time, like Mouse Sports, these sorts of, or was it like lower level teams?
No, of course. So that was also the case, because we had to prove ourselves that we are worth playing against. So that was the time when ERC came to play, and there were lots of different private channels for better teams, let's say, in Europe, and some of the teams had access to this channel. So it happened that we managed to obtain access to few channels like that, but those channels were also like tiers. So we had access to like middle tier teams, the higher tier teams, like the top European teams still didn't want to play against us. So it happened. We started playing against the best European teams when we showed ourselves during some I think it was CPL in Bilbao in Spain. So we actually went to CPL qualifier as underdogs, and I think we placed a second in CPL Bilbao, losing to Mouse Sports like it was like 13-11, something like this. So it was just one round or something. So then everyone realized that, hey, these guys are real deal, and they started competing with us. They started to practicing with us, but the beginning was really tough. So I remember that one of the teams that were playing against us a lot was EFF-KULT. This was like old school German team, but that was because prior to the CPL Bilbao and us going around the Europe participating in LAN tournaments, we also took part in Open Cup in clan base. So there was a clan base, sort of a ESL right now. So the clan base was a online league where you could play in Eurocup on Open Cup. So Eurocup and Open Cup was a tournament hosted once a year, maybe twice a year. So with Eurocup having LAN finals in Amsterdam. So
it was basically like the Champions League in football. For anyone who's
exactly.
Like a new fan.
Oh yeah. I was trying to find some metaphor for that. Yeah. So exactly, and so it happened that I think 2012, 2002, 2001, or even earlier. I think 2000, when we managed to place third in Open Cup, and we won against EFF-KULT. So that was the time when German scene, noticed us, and they gave us a shot. So we had lots of opportunities to practice with middle tier teams, and it was just grinding. So we were just losing lots of games. I think over the history, our history, we lost more games than we won. So it was.
Okay.
I'm positive. I'm absolutely sure we lost more than we won. But this is just nature of being competitive. So we were grinding and trying to advance, show ourselves to better teams, and have better practice partners.
Okay, so since, as I mentioned, the player that people will know that you were teamed up with early on was Luke. What was Luke like as a young person, as a young player?
Oh, he was reckless, but he was like this was punk rock for us, because something that you probably don't know about Polish scene was that we are like we all were reckless. Me and Luke and a couple of our friends. So we were public enemies of Polish scene. So no one really liked us. We had lots of conflicts on our scene. But we really like that. We played this dark side role on our domestic Polish scene. So for us it was more like a punk rock. We were raging against everything. We were proving everyone that
What does that word mean? I'm just confused. Punk rock. What does that mean?
I mean, the music punk, right?
Punk,
Punks.
right? Okay,
Punks.
sorry, punk rock. Yes. Okay,
punk.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
So it was like just metaphor, obviously we are not punk rockers or something like this, but on
just like the attitude. Yeah.
Just the attitude. We were just raging and against everything, because we like that aggressive style in CS. We always like to play aggressively. We always like to chant. We like to shout during our games. So we were really known for that, from the different tournaments. So whenever we were going online, offline, we were playing against someone, on some tournament, we were screaming, shouting and so on. We were very, expressive people. So Lucas was, like that in early age, and I don't think he changed. I really like that. We are always, trying to find this original way of living. So I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know in the early days, like before you get to the Pentagram time, there was this team where TaZ came over and joined up with you guys, and then you were winning a bunch of the Polish lands. And then the story I remember, because I did an interview with him back in the day, was like the World Cyber Games qualifier was going to come up. Like it was your team, and then the other team was like NEO, who's in the SPECNAS team. And something like just before the qualifier, TaZ had like a fight with you or something and left him and made a different team or something like this, right? And then in the end, it was actually your team that I think won the qualifier or something, right?
Yeah. So that was the case in 2001 and 2002. I think it's something between these years. So we had a team. So it was called Aristocracy. I'm sorry, no, not Aristocracy. It was CGL.red. So okay. There was a time where different teams had divisions. So we had the CGL.red division, where me, TaZ, Luke, I think was some guy from Germany, I think Tomek or something, and I think Splash from one of the cafes from Warsaw. So we were playing together. Obviously, when you spend lots of time together, it was 12 to 16 hours a day, because we were just practicing. We wanted to become professional players. We were dedicated. We committed ourselves. So obviously some issues, some argues were just popping up from time to time, and me, Luke, are pretty much different people than TaZ. So we're on the two opposite sides of the stick. So I can't really remember what was the issue about, but TaZ decided to leave us, and he joined the other division of CGL.
Right.
It was called CGL Blue. So he played with his friends. He wanted to prove us that he will beat us because he is the best on the team. But we won flawlessly, because I think they didn't even get to the finals. I think in finals we played against Spetsnaz, against NEO, and we won this edition. And then next edition we lost against them. But TaZ, I remember TaZ left, and
Okay, so this is another area. Obviously, many CS fans are going to know who TaZ is. I mean, up to this day, very famous player. Obviously, the one that always did the interviews, is on camera. So he's got a very well-established personality now. But he's also like over the age of 30 now. He's a very different person. You know, he's had his whole life. At this point in time, as you said, this is actually something he even said in the interview I did with him like 10 years ago, which was that when he was coming up, when he described these like different teams he was in, like his whole thing was, this is why it's going to surprise people, because people will think, right, oh, everyone in the Polish scene always thought, you know, NEO was the best and they all understood he was the best. But TaZ even says he used to think he was the best player and that that's why he didn't want to play with NEO, because he thought he was going to beat NEO. So who was TaZ at this time? Because this would have been when he was like, you know, 16. So what was the young TaZ like?
So back in then, so as I remember, so we were different people, but there was only one thing that really connected us. That was that all of us, like five of us, we always wanted to be the best, and we always wanted to compete. And TaZ, probably, you know, privately, me and TaZ would never, you know, come along. We would never like each other and so on, because we are different people. We have different, you know, philosophy in life, different goals, and so on. But because of the Counter-Strike and because of this, you know, dream of becoming the best team in the world, TaZ joined us, we joined TaZ, and so on. So what was the TaZ? I mean, can't really remember. I remember him. He was very passive in everything he does. He don't like taking the risks. He's a bit nerdish, but I think we all been nerdish back then. So that's yeah. So I mean, I remember TaZ backed off in person, you know, not liking taking the risk and so on, being very passive. That's I remember. But at the same time, he was very competitive. So yeah, as I said, probably in a private life we wouldn't get along, but we all wanted to be the best one. So we had to somehow shake our hands and focus on one goal.
Okay. And so as people might understand, when I referenced there that TaZ was like 16 around this time,
Right.
NEO would only have been about 15. I mean, you were a couple of years older. So some people might remember when we've seen like articles, or I remember when Valve did that like mini documentary at the Major about NEO, sometimes they like to show this really old school picture of him where he's like 12 years old or something. He looks like a little kid. And he's in like that. I think it's when his dad had that LAN cafe or something, right? It's in this really early setting playing the game. Was he like one of the youngest players in the scene at the time? What was he like as a person? Because obviously nowadays he's always seemed very humble, very quiet.
Oh, he was always
he different
like
when he was young?
No. He was always like that. He was very humble, very respectful for everyone. So I remember the time when me and Lucas, we were already playing in Aristocracy, the team that was hated but most of the Polish scene. On the other side of the stick, there was a NEO with Spetsnaz, the team that everyone loved in Poland and so on. So we were always competing with them. But NEO always had a full respect for me and Lucas. I remember playing against him one-on-one on different maps and so on. So, sometimes I was winning, sometimes he was winning. But it was all in a respectful manner. And he was really humble all the time. So I had only good memories with NEO. He was always, striking me that he was he could play on anything. He never was complaining about the conditions of the mouse pad or something like this, or the ping or something. He was always focusing on his gameplay, on how he plays, and he always was trying to improve his gameplay. So he had very competitive mindset, and I was happy to play with him in one team. So
obviously, when people are young, we don't expect them to all be as good as they will be when they're top pro. But were his skills actually like good in the early days? Was he like a prodigy at Counter-Strike?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not in the very early years, because we were just, as I told you, we were just closed in Poland. We didn't really have chance to expose ourselves to different play styles. But once we were competing on an international level, we always knew that he has all the qualities to become the best player in the world. So it happened really quickly. Once we got chance to play with better teams, we as a team were progressing, but also he as an individual player, he was also making huge progresses.
Okay. So as we referenced before, when you had this first World Cyber Games qualifier and you won this, well, when you went to the World Cyber Games itself, and this was the one where I remember it was the one that was in South Korea, so
right.
Obviously must have been a pretty eye-opening experience, right?
Right there, yeah, absolutely. So one of the best experiences in my life. I mean, this is what I've, because right now I'm working in the office, casual work, I would say. I have a stable job. I do lots of different stuff, traveling around the world and so on, enjoying life. But the place I am right now, I really, how to say, all I have right now is in major thanks to CS. And why CS? Because CS allowed me to travel around the world, to meet different cultures, to meet different people, to break the stereotypes, to have a chance to live through different adventures on a different part of the world. So, and Korea was one of this case. So Korea for me was like Alice in the Wonderland. So you tumbling down the rabbit hole,
sure.
And you are in the Korea, so everything is different. The way people eat, the way people behave. It was eye-opening experience. And fast forward a few years later, I got job on in Samsung, and now I'm traveling to Korea. Every few months. So yeah, it's like my second home. So I can't tell you if I would be here if not for CS. So yeah, I mean, probably it made me who I am right now.
Okay. Right. So at this tournament, though, I mean, to be fair, obviously it's one of the first big international tournaments you're going to. It's in a different location. And I will point out, I know when they had these first World Cyber Games in Korea, a lot of the results were quite weird because, a lot of Western teams had never been to Asia, for example. And,
right.
We know even as professionals to this day, you have to learn how to adjust your sleep schedule, different food. So you didn't do very well at this tournament. And I noticed when I looked it up, the teams you lost to are not even teams that anyone would know, basically. So were there problems at this tournament?
So I think what you just said, I mean, it was first time for us to be in that completely different time zone. So, jet lags, us being excited about where we are, not really paying attention to the game, not really knowing the different play styles, probably the stress and so on. So lots of different things come to play, and I think we lost in the group stage, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't really a good tournament for us, but it gave us lots of experience which we could use later on. We will notice a lot about how different teams practice before games. We didn't really have chance to attend so many tournaments outside the Poland. So that was one of the first major tournament which we participated. And even though we lost, that gave us solid foundations towards future successes. So it was a great experience, regardless of the outcome.
Okay. So I know the next year it was a similar story. Like you teamed up with TaZ again, You went to the World Cyber Games. Unfortunately, since you had TaZ on your team this time, you lost. NEO's team won this time. They went to World Cyber Games. Same story, though. They didn't do very well at World Cyber Games.
Right.
So this part of the story, if you put both parts together, makes sense as to why the next part is the part that people might start to remember, which is let's actually get the best players from these two teams and make a really good team. Because at the moment, we've got like some good players, but they're all split up, battling each other. And if you're all battling each other, then if you go and put one team against the best international team, there's not going to be good enough. So how did the team figure out who the right players to join together were?
So obviously we wanted to have a NEO on our team only, but NEO didn't want to go alone. So we had to make some compromise. We have to make some agreements. So at the beginning, we decided to form a team which consisted of 6 players, 3 from our team and 3 from Spetsnaz team. So we're mixing different lineups. We're playing with one guy on the bench, and after a while, one of them, I think it was Pitrek or Miri. One of them.
I think it was Pitrek. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. So Pitrek stayed with us. And Miri said he had, or it was all the way around, I don't know. Anyway, one of them said they do not have all the time that we require, and they are not so committed as we are, and so on. So, it was just natural selection. So 5 of us stayed, and we played in this lineup for quite some time. And that was the beginning, because we formed the team which we were dreaming of for quite some time. That gave us lots of fuel, that's motivation,
sure,
to train, to practice, and so on. And it paid well, because that was the time when we started winning lots of different tournaments. So I remember we went to what was that, Lenitz in Germany, in Lenitz. Yes. There was some tournament which we won, I think, against Mouse Sports in the finals.
Yes.
Yeah. And couple other tournaments. I think there was a Invex Cup somewhere in Czech Republic or Romania. We won against other teams from this region. Then we went to Bilbao also, where we placed second or something. So we could see that this change gave us lots of confidence in our play style, and of course we weren't that young at this time. We had some years of experience, so we forged this experience into successes. So we knew what to expect from the tournaments. We knew how to prepare before tournaments, who to play against before, who to practice, what kind of tactics to practice, and so on. So that at that time a lot of puzzles come together, and we started to understand the CS on higher level. So we started to understand how even things like eating before game or eating after game helps you out. How to train your tactics, which tactics to show, and so on. So a lot of different things about also motivating ourselves. So that was a constant improvement and constant grinding, but on I would say professional level.
Sure. So actually, one tournament I did want to ask about, you briefly referenced it there, but I think you got it mixed up, because I remember, because at the time I was friends with the Finnish player Nartu, who was playing Destination Skyline. And I remember I was actually living with him at the time, and he went off to 2 tournaments during this time, 2004. One was the Invex Cup, which I think that was in Latvia. And then the other one was this one called Euro Cyber Cup, which, as you say, was in Czech Republic. And this is the one that you won.
Okay.
And so this one, right, at the time when he went off to this tournament, his team had just been to the big CPL, and they'd come 4th place. So none of the other teams at this tournament were anywhere close to that kind of placing internationally, So they really thought, the whole reason they were attending these small tournaments is right, what we'll do is we'll just fly to these little tournaments, win them easily. It's pretty good money for first place. Then we'll go home, we'll get ready for the next big tournament. And so he left one day, and I was like, all right, see ya. And then when he got back, I was like, all right, so where's the trophy then? And he was like, well, we didn't win. And I was like, what do you mean though? Who beat you then? Because I was thinking, all right, the one other team that I remember was notable there was the German advanced online losers team. It was like who were like vaguely well known, but even they weren't that great, you know. I was like, all right, did you lose to them? And they were, oh no, there was this Polish team actually. And then everyone was like, what the fuck? Who?
Yeah.
Because obviously, you know, nobody knew this team. Nobody knew that this was going to be a good squad in terms of like international Counter-Strike. So was the team already at a good level if they could win a tournament like this?
Yeah, so we before these tournaments we already had lots of connections with different teams. So we were practicing, obviously not against Scandinavian teams because of the connection. Because Scandinavians never wanted to play on equal terms in terms of like.
It's famous. They always want to play on their own server with 5 ping.
Exactly. So we were not practicing against them. However, we were practicing at that time. We were a lot of practicing against teams like. All Against Authority from France, teams from UK, Four Kings and so on, teams from Germany. There were lots of teams from Germany actually. So alternate attacks. I think it was one of the most played teams on practices for us. So lots of teams from Sweden. They didn't even know about our existence. You know. So I'm not surprised that they were shocked when they saw us playing that good. But we already knew, and we already were confident what we can achieve, how we can play because of these practices. Because even though, you know, after all these years, we always had to play on unequal terms, and we were winning these games. For instance. Alternate attacks had, you know, I don't know, 20 ping. We had 50 ping, but we were actually winning the games. So we were always telling ourselves, look, guys, if we go LAN, then we will have much more, better conditions. So I'm absolutely sure that we're gonna win all these games. So we were very, very confident. So these unequal games online unequal games gave us lots of confidence in our skill online because. You know, online we all have, you know, 0 ping. So yeah, we were just wrecking everyone. And so that was Eurocup. So did we win Invex Cup?
Yes. Yeah, I believe you won that. I think the other one, the Invex Cup, was before, and I think you went out in the group stage or something fairly early. You know, I can't remember. Okay, what about this then? So during this era, since you now had TaZ and Luke in the same team, I know later in their careers, these were two players who were quite infamous for when they were playing big LAN games. They were like shouting at the opponents, like getting up, like doing like fist pumps and stuff, you know, like this. I know nowadays people might do it for the camera on streams, but back then this is quite rare. I mean, for example, if you ever saw Swedish or Danish teams, you know, they're just sitting there very quiet, you know, they win the round, like, you know, good, nice or something, you know, like they're not getting super pumped. Were they these guys like this in the early days?
Yeah, so we were one of the very, you know, few teams that were you know, very live in LAN games, but we actually, I think on one of the tournaments on PG Challenge, we noticed that few guys from the Titans, from the Danish team, they were doing the same thing, you know. So they were after every single one round, they were screaming, you know, nice. Okay. So we're like, hey, yeah, this is cool. I mean, this is something that helps us boost your confidence, boost your morals, but also decrease enemies' morals. And at that time, we started using this to intimidate people on LAN because mind games was also a big part of CS. Being very trash talking, for instance. You know, I know a lot of people didn't like trash talking, but for us, it was just part of the CS. So we basically did a lot of trash talking against our enemies. We're fine with insulting in a sportsmanship way. Yes. Of course, after the games, we're just shaking the hands and saying good game, regardless of whether we won or lost or something like this. But mind games, screaming, shouting, trash talking. This was a big part of the CS professional gaming for us, and that's why we always trying to use all the possible tools to to help ourselves winning the games. Since I remember, since we saw this for the first time, we were always doing like this. We were always screaming and being very alive.
So I remember one of the first very notable wins, because when you win the Lenitsland tournament and you win this tournament in Czech Republic, even though some of the teams there are good, the tournament itself isn't as famous. It's not, in a very famous location.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first obviously big wins was winning the Samsung European Championship.
Right.
This was where, for people who don't know, so everyone will remember now World Cyber Games, and people know, okay, it's kind of like the Olympics. Well, if you think about the way we have the World Cup and then we have the European Championship, where it's just the European teams, they had the same thing in esports. We had it, so just the European teams in Counter-Strike were playing in this Samsung European Championship. And at this one, you won this tournament. Again, big money. This is like 15,000 euros or something. Wow. You got to beat the Danish SK team, who people might remember later went on to do very well in the SWC. Was this a big moment for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This was one of the highlights of our careers. I would say the first major, biggest tournament that we ever dreamed of. World Cyber Games, European Cyber Games. That was pretty much all the same level of. Pretty much same level of. How to say importance of the events for us. So I remember this was during CBIT, I think, first, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
it was always in Germany.
Yeah. So this was on in Germany, in I think Frankfurt or Hanover, right?
Yeah.
Right, Hanover. So there was lots of people coming, coming in and out, because this was during the electronic fairs. So there was not only people that were originally interested in CS, but also outsiders, people from different countries, also Polish people that were just stopping by and seeing us with flags and so on. They were asking what's happening here and so on. So we were exposed to a lot of different communities and people, not only just hardcore fans. So I remember this event was, I think, even streamed and transmitted in TVs, MTV, and so on. So lots of different media, and us playing in the final against team who, I think, just before the finals they went to us and they were just making fun of us and trying to intimidate us. But no offense, this was just trash talking. So
just the mind games.
Mind games. Yeah. Okay. So we always really like these guys because this was a former Titans team. I think they joined SK, and SK was a great brand back then. I don't know how it is right now, but I believe it is right now as well, because Brazilian team, right?
Yeah, until recently, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it was always big brand. It was always something that you were looking up and checking how SK is playing, who's playing in SK. Because of the Hiton, Potti, and so on. All this, and Fisker and stuff like that. So we're always following this SK. So for us, it was as I said, like a highlight of our career, beating SK in European Cyber Games, proving everyone once for all that we are, part of, top teams in the world, and that we can win basically any tournament that we want. So that was amazing time.
So as you referenced earlier, when you said you made the original lineup with the 6 players, because you had the 4 that we talked about, and then you had Pitrek, and also Miri was at the time was on the bench, but then, he came in and replaced Pitrek, who left. But then later you had Miri go out, and this player called Napalm briefly came in, which is where you won this tournament. But then after this, he went out the team, and in came Rulon, who maybe some people might remember. Why was so many roster moves, and yet the other 4 players stays the same?
Right, because for us, I think it was always about commitment and your goals. So all of 4 of us, me, NEO, TaZ, and Luke, we always were willing to commit our private lives. I don't know, this sounds really silly now, but we were just hardcore nerds, and we were just playing 12, 16 hours a day, and we were expecting the same from the 5th player. So and it was always a problem. It was always a problem to find the 5th player who was willing to sacrifice his life as much as we did just to accomplish these goals that we put in front of ourselves. So we were just trying different players, and after a while they were just saying, guys, this is too much for us. This is too much for me. I cannot do this. I have a girlfriend. I have something else, and so on. So we're always forced to find another one who maybe will fit to our equation and will be as much committed as us four. So that was the time when we were just couldn't find that guy, and that was the case with Pitrek, Miri, Napalm, Rulon, which you mentioned. And after a while, I think it was the same case with me, because I found a girl, and the same stuff happened to me.
Sure. It's a familiar story to a lot of Counter-Strike pros, I think, back in the day.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so after this, he went to Korea again, because he went to one of the World Esports Games, WEG, and it was the Season 2 event. And this was actually, for people who don't know, it wasn't just like going to a tournament like going to World Cyber Games, because what made this a very unique event, and again made it actually a kind of a challenge to some teams, was you would go there and you'd live there for like a month. And you wouldn't, now, even up until recently, we have Counter-Strike tournaments that take 3 days, And so people are used to, you play your group games, you play the next match, you keep going each day. But back then, because this was like streamed on a television show or something, it was like you were playing like games like every few days, and you have a proper practice room to practice the other teams. And then if you go from the first group stage to the second group stage, maybe that's like a week or 2 weeks. So it's a pretty big thing. And I remember one of the things that I know a lot of the Western teams had a problem with is, back then, if you only see your teammates when you go to a LAN and it's for 3 days, you can get along with a teammate who you don't really like personally. But if you have to go and live for a month with the guy, it might get a bit tougher, So what was the experience like for your guys actually going to Korea for so long?
All right, yeah. So this was so first of all the teams that went there got places in hotels. So basically we got rooms, but it was usually 2 rooms per team or something like this.
Okay.
So we had to sleep in one room, me and Luke, for instance, NEO with TaZ, and so on. So you didn't really have free time, as you said. So we really had to live together. And obviously there was lots of quarrels. Obviously there was lots of different argues. Some guys wanted to do something different. Some guys wanted to do, go out and eat somewhere else. Others wanted to have a Pizza Hut or something in Korea. Like, for instance, I remember TaZ was really insisting on, eating pizza, where me and Luke, we wanted to explore and different, cultures. So we were like pushing, hey, dude, let's go to eat something, like bulgogi or something, try some domestic kitchen, some cuisines. So yeah, we were just arguing, but it wasn't a big thing, because we all knew that we have to practice, we have to compete, because as you said, I think it was every weekend there was a game or something like this, and we had to go to MTV, Korean MTV studio, where they were streaming all the games with shoutcasters and so on. So we were just arguing, but then going back and playing games. So this was just more like a professional stage of CS. So I'm sure that even nowadays, people who play in these professional teams, they don't really, they don't necessarily like each other. They know that they have to play as a professional, they have to behave as a professionals. But outside of CS, they probably don't hang out that much, So it's a normal case. So, but it was really intense experience for us, because we had to spend there 1 month. We did lots of different stupid things as well. Being there for 1 month, with basically place that you can sleep, and just being obligated to show up once a week in an MTV studio gave us a lot of different, options and a lot of different a lot of freedom to explore Korea as we wanted. So it was great time. Sports-wise side, I don't really remember how we end up. I think we won against Australian team or New Zealand team.
Oh, it was Canadian. It was Evil Geniuses. I can tell you the basics. You got out the first group stage, and then in the second group stage was you basically got the group of death because you had
Four Kings, right?
You lost to them in the first group stage, but you had the team that won the tournament, which was Big Rip, which was Forrest and Tentpole and Roman, very, very famous players now. And they actually won the tournament, if you remember. And you had Catch Gamer, which is BSL's team. They came second in the tournament. And you had Natu's team, the Finnish team, Astralis. So you had a very tough group. But actually, the team, Big Rip, the one that won the tournament, and obviously now people definitely know people like Forrest, you actually had a very close game against them. It was 11-13 on train.
Yeah, so great time being there because official games, that was one case, but during our stay in this hotel, I mentioned we had a few rooms to sleep, but we also had one dedicated room for 5 PCs where we were just we were free to sit as much as we want and participate as much as we want, and that was the case for all of the teams back then on the WEC. So basically, that was big 1 month long boot camp that you could basically play with any team that was on this tournament, and you could do this 24/7. So even the official games, that was one part of this tournament, but this was also great experience from the practice perspective and learning perspective, because even though I think we lost, we stayed there and we practiced. We still practice it a lot against these teams. Yeah.
So I know one of the last tournaments you played with this squad before they started to make some of the roster moves that people might remember was when you went to the World Cyber Games this year. And the thing that was different about the 2005 World Cyber Games is this was the very weird one where even though some of the qualifiers were in 1.6, the finals was in CS Source. And so as a result, what was weird was you got a lot of teams go to the main World Cyber Games who actually weren't Source teams. And so it made the results very weird. And your problem is you actually had to play the team that won, which is Team 3D, basically in the first round of the playoffs. So were you actually any good at Source? Had your team practiced it much? What was it like to play the team that won the tournament?
Yeah, so when we find out that this is gonna be Source, we actually schedule day by day practices against the best Source teams in Poland. But that wasn't enough, obviously. We practiced it about 2 weeks maybe before the tournament. Obviously wasn't enough to win the tournament, to do some serious damage over there. But for me, it was really a strange decision. I believe that was dictated by the fact that the organization wanted to promote
I think something like this, yeah.
And I think that was the time when they were considering switching to CS or something like this. But then I think they changed to 1.6 again, and then after a few years, CS Source came in. So really strange decision. It would made much more sense if we would play the qualifiers on Source. So that.
Yeah.
But but it was in San Francisco, right?
No, this was the one that was in Singapore. 2004 was San Francisco.
Okay, Singapore.
Okay,
yeah.
So at the end of this year was when, officially at least, you left the lineup. They brought in Lord, and then later on, it was 6 months later, they got Cuban, and then the very famous lineup started, that started winning the majors and stuff. Mm-hmm. So you've explained before, one of the reasons, very understandable reason why you were no longer in the team is you had more of a life, you had a girlfriend, you weren't just playing the game all day long. Right. Obviously, at the time, I can totally see the appeal of that. Is there a part of you somehow wishes like you could have stayed in the team, or was it the wrong move to make? Did someone who's very philosophical? Do you not mind? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. So you're asking me if I regret anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I regret. I mean, the girl is gone right now.
Sure.
So yeah, of course. Of course, I regret. I mean, I could, commit myself and do more and stay with them for 1 year more. I don't know, 2 years more, maybe 10 years more. I don't know. This is just something which I will never find out. I don't live in I don't know, sadness or something. My life is in a good shape. I'm happy person. I basically have everything I ever dreamed of. So no regrets now. But back then, of course, I mean, I was a little bit, upset, a little bit sad that I lost this chance. And it was really shocking experience for me, obviously, because lots of these people, even though I was saying that with most of them I wouldn't probably get along in private life, I still felt like I lost a huge chunk of my life. What's going to happen now? I have to go to a normal job and so on. So it was really tough time for me, but I somehow I managed to find a job, to finish school, to basically heal myself up. And few years later, same thing happened to Luke.
Sure.
I met with him. We talked, and now we still hang around, and we're still good friends. So yeah, you never know. I try not to think too much about that. Probably if I would stay with them, I would have I don't know, I would maybe be playing today. You never know. But my life is good enough. I just think that the girl is gone now. So
sure, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, what about this then? So when they then did go on and they were winning World Cyber Games and ESWC and these sorts of things, did you ever used to check in on what was going on, like look on the internet, see the results? What did you think? Was it surprising even to you that they were basically became the best team in the world at certain points in time?
I mean, I wasn't surprised because we had what we needed, to achieve that kind of goals. We just needed more time to, make it on more regular basis. Start winning, start analyzing, enemies and so on. So probably, with me or with any other player, sooner or later they would start winning. But of course, I was checking from time to time what's happening there. It was impossible, because their big wins were everywhere, all over the internet, and plus all my friends were like playing. I had lots of friends from this, from the circle. So they were just telling me, "Hey, did you hear about last win?" and so on. So, part of me was like, okay, I'm sorry that it's not me, but the other part was like, I kind of knew that they are good, and it's well deserved because guys put lots of effort. I know how they prepare, how they practice, because I was part of it. So compared to other teams, I don't think that other teams at that time were practicing and approaching trainings, strategy sessions the way we did.
What kind of things did you guys do?
So half of this was just practices against other teams, but we are also creating different strategies. So we're spending lots of time alone on the server. We had about 70 tactics per site on one map.
All right.
So that was lots of different tactics to remember. So we were learning this on modular basis. So there was a part of tactic, for instance, on Nuke, where we were taking over the inside house or something like this. So we were just learning this module, and then we were learning how to take over the ramp or how to take over the outside. And then when you had lots of different modules like puzzles, then you could actually mix them and take one side with tactic B, take other side with tactic A 2.0 or something. And so we had lots of different tactics. We were just practicing these tactics. We were analyzing. We had guy who was analyzing enemies demos. I know that most of teams didn't really watch our demos, but I mean later on they started. But yeah, so we're just hardcore, back then. So and this is why we advance so quickly, and this is why they advance so quickly.
Right. Whenever I've done videos about like this Golden Five lineup and the championships they've won, one of the things I often mention, just because to me it was so amazing, was that obviously not only did this team become very good, but at certain points in time, NEO was probably the best player in all of Counter-Strike. And this is very rare, because if you came from the early days of Counter-Strike, the best player is always someone Swedish, it's just someone different Swedish depending on the... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So whenever I mentioned this though, I noticed that a lot of the people in the Golden Five lineup used to get really like irritated with me, because they always felt like you shouldn't say one player is better. And, like believe it or not, it was even some of the ones who weren't even that skilled. Like it was people like Lord who were trying to tell me like, why are you saying he was better than me? And I was like, come on, man, listen, you've got championships, guy, enjoy it. Like, but he's a pretty good player. So was NEO like unique in terms of his ability? What would you say in that sense?
No, I mean, he really understood the team play, team-based games. So he knew that he don't really, he will not never, he shouldn't be really putting himself, in the spotlight. He shouldn't acting as a superstar, because that would badly influence the other guys on the team. But come on, man. I mean, he was the best in terms of like skill wise. But of course, like tactical wise, some of us had really great ideas at some point, so he was also learning from us about the positioning from the map, because when you play like 1 year in CT on some position, you find out, all the stuff about this position. So he also asked us about different stuff, how you position here, what you do here, and where you shoot and stuff like that. But in terms of like purely, shooting, reflex, and so on, in my opinion, he was the best, and no argue here. No.
Okay, right. I know from experience that Polish people are very nationalistic. They're very proud to be Polish. The history of Poland. Are you someone like this? Is this in your personality? If so, do you, even if you weren't in the Golden Five lineup, do you kind of feel like you have a special place in esports history for helping to bring Poland from, as I say, being basically, we didn't even know they existed in Counter-Strike, to being already at the point that we're talking about here, like a good team before the Golden Five lineup, won tournaments, attending the international tournaments. Do you take a special pride in this?
Absolutely. I mean, always playing and representing my country, it was something special to me. And what's more, as you said, before us, most of people didn't even, pay attention to where Poland is. They didn't even know about our existence. So, and it was time where, lots of people were arguing that we will never be good, that, we don't have conditions, and that German teams are better, Swedish teams are better, and so on. So we always wanted to prove that they are wrong. We always wanted to prove that Polish teams can compete, that we can be the best, and so on. So we even I said about us learning how to motivate ourselves in a game, that this was also a big part of the CS, how to raise your morals by shouting and so on. But where we were also gaining lots of motivation were our fans, because we were receiving lots of emails from people from Poland, across the whole globe, telling us that they are so proud, because we are representing this country, that they can be proud of us, proud of Poland, and so on. Being on different tournaments, whether it was Lenitz in Berlin, for instance. I remember the guy who was living in Germany. He, came to our tournament. He never participated in any, he never, I think, even played a computer game. But he just heard that there is a Polish team playing in the finals, so he came in, so happy and so on. So I could see that, our wins. They give lots of joy to Polish people, and it meant everything to me, man. It was great honor to me to carry Polish flag, to play, even though when we were, because in CS there is this I would say rule that whenever two teams are competing against each other, for instance, SK against us and so on. It wasn't only SK against us. There was always flags next to it, right? There was always Danish flag, Polish flag.
Yes.
So you always had this feeling that you are not only representing the brand, your clan, but you're also always representing your country. So the national thing was always somewhere there in this game. But in a good meaning, in a good way. So
Okay. Well, we've got through a lot of stuff here. At the end of this interview, do you have like a final message for people or something you'd just like to say?
Not really. Thank you for this interview. Thank you for having me here. I'm just what I wanted to say. I'm just really thankful for what happened in CS. That CS made me who I am. I got lots of great experience. I have lots of friends, from playing CS. So keep it up. This is a good game.
Dziękuję.
Dziękuję. Thank you very much.
This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Alex Adams, Eddie Wingfors, Daniel Yordanov, Robert Baxter, Travis Greb, Kyla Harris, James Harding, Cesar, and special thanks go out to Matt Shakowski and Jerky's Minion in particular. Want teasers for my upcoming content? How about asking me a question for my monthly AMA? Do you want to take part in a discussion about esports with me? How about suggesting a topic or a guest for my content? Put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today.